want you to talk about when justice first got on your radar and how God moved you to make a difference. Talk about that.
Well, I have told this story before, and I was reading Terrify No More, and I was reading everything I could get my hands on, really, about IJM. I was coming out of a faith crisis. I needed to know that God was at work in human affairs, that He was working and changing lives. And I had been working some with Teen Challenge and really seeing vibrant change in people's lives. But I got a hold of this story that people were really giving everything that they had to go work on the front lines of this violent, encounter with human trafficking. These were men and women of faith. I couldn't read enough, and I remember reading Gary Haugen's line. He says, in times of despair, when I see the crushing of the innocent, I used to ask, where is God? And that was right where I had been. And he said, but I no longer ask, where is God? He said, no, my plea has changed. Now I ask, where are God's people? And I remember physically dropping the book. I was pacing the floor. I went downstairs. Troy was watching a football game, and I got between him and the TV. And
every wife's strategy. Now's a good time.
Which, now TiVo has saved us, now from a lot of conflict, because you can pause the game.
That's right.
And he said, what's on your mind? And I said, we're not the Good Samaritan, Troy. We're not. We walk on the other side of the road. If we see someone in trouble, we assume someone else will get this. The experts will handle it. We're not experts. We're not qualified to respond. And I said, I want to just practice. Can we please practice being responders, responding to needs, whatever that looks like. But I just, sign me up. I want to try. And I could feel how inadequate I was and would be at this. And Troy said, let's do that. I said, no excuses. The next time our brother or our neighbor is hurt and on the side of the road, let's go. And no excuses. And Troy was like, no excuses. We'll practice. I said, we have to start somewhere. And so that was Friday night. Sunday night, Katrina hit the Gulf Coast. And I watched on TV like anyone else. We were all watching those events of that baby that dehydrated right on TV. Just the stories were unbelievable. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, this is my brother. He's down on the side of the road. And I turned to Troy and I said, you and your dad need to go down there.
And here am I, Lord. Send Troy.
Send Troy and his dad.
And your dad.
And Troy said, well, okay, Miss Good Samaritan, I don't mean to be too cynical here, but you were the one, weren't you the one standing over me, saying, imploring me? And I said, oh, but I've got the kids, I can't possibly make arrangements that fast. And Troy said, you need to go. God, he knew, God's doing something in your heart, you need to go. And so, of course, my mother-in-law agreed to take the kids, and it ended up being incredible. And it really was the start of a journey for me of, I can respond. I can actually get involved.
Amen. And I want you to just expand a little bit, because we didn't get into that story the last time, this part of the story, but you brought your bus down there. You really didn't know what you were going to be in for, but what happened?
I had no idea. I'll try to keep it short because there's so many aspects to this story that I could go into, but the cool thing was, I don't know if you remember the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where you have Richard Dreyfuss, and he's like eating potatoes. He's carving Devil's Tower out of his mashed potatoes, and he can't help but draw this thing. And then all these people come to Devil's Tower. It's like they all were dreaming about it. It's a great movie, Steven Spielberg. It's it's a classic.
Look on my face.
Yeah, you haven't seen it, I can tell, but Tim's seen it. He knows what I'm talking about. But people are just drawn to this area by these sort of like, they can't help it. They've got to go, And that's what it felt like. In this really neat way, God had assembled His people. And it was all believers. And every single person, I'd say, how did you get here? And every person like me, I was sitting on my couch, and then it dawned on me. And everybody found a path to get there. Now, there were no phone lines, nothing. And we all found our way to this church in Slidell that became a major distribution point in that area. And it was a church had just been built. It was roughed in, so it was just a huge warehouse, basically, a cement floor and walls. And that became, for the next several months, a distribution point for that area. And the cool thing was, when we pulled in, I remember getting out and we said, we're from Minnesota and we have diapers. We parked our bus in our parking lot at church and we called KTIS and they were really gracious. They got on the air, said Troy and Sarah have their bus over in Bloomington, drop off diapers. It was overwhelming, the response. Everyone came out and brought diapers. I remember getting off the bus and I said to this woman, we're from Minnesota, we have diapers. And she burst into tears and she said, Jim, or whoever was inside the building, she said, Jim, you won't believe this, they have diapers. And they had a virtual Walmart in this church, but they had just run out of diapers.
Oh, my goodness.
And here we pull in with diapers, and I watched that happen over and over again. And at the end of the time there, we were standing in a circle praying late at night, and a semi-truck pulls in. And I said to the driver, how did you get here? And I just kept asking people, how did you get here? And this was long before, this was really right after, the storm. So Salvation Army was there, but they were just getting started in the more long-term relief. But here God was providing. And this entire thing was just neighbors. The entire thing. There was no one official, not a single official person at this entire site. And so it was neat to see people just rise to the occasion. And the next Sunday I was in church and we were singing the Chris Tomlin song, Who Has Seen the Storehouses of God, from the Job, And I was just like, I saw one. I've seen one. I saw a storehouse of God. And it was just incredible, and faith building. And then from there, God had me, to Rwanda. It unfolded very quickly from there. I met Elizabeth not a month and a half after that.
Yeah. Wow. I know I knew that story, but it's been a while since we talked about it. And the reason I wanted you to share it, Sarah, is we talk on the show quite often about being a necessary miracle. And to be a necessary miracle in someone's life, we've got to be intentional, and we've got to get up out of our comfort spot and reach out. But when we do that, we partner with God, don't we?
Yeah, it is. And it was an incredible feeling that I had played a small, infinitesimal part in something that God was orchestrating.